Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Dee McDonald of the Telos Healing Center. My wife, Reverend Luzette McDonald, and we created the Telos Healing Center together, and I created the Destination Method, which I'd like to talk to you a little bit about now. And it has to do with something of profound importance. Many of our products, many of the things that we teach, has to do with the integration of opposites. The reason for that is because the mind itself is made of opposites. And evolution, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, is a consequence of the integration of these opposites. And I want to talk to you about that. The Destination Method defines the mind, both the conscious mind and the unconscious mind, in a certain way. The nature of the mind, according to the Destination Method, is immeasurable goodness. Now, of course, this is not scientific, because anything that can't be measured isn't within the realm of science. But we claim, and we're convinced, that the nature of the mind is immeasurable goodness, that it is goodness in and of itself infinitely. We say that the operation of the mind is something that can be noticed, which is our minds operate through representational formats, through mental pictures, sounds, feelings, tastes, and smells, so that when you remember what the color of your car is, you represent your car in your mind's eye. You represent the sound of a train whistle in the distance. You represent the feeling, what it's like to get into a very hot bath on a cold morning. So when you have these representations, this is your mind operating. The mind operates through representations. And the consequence of these representations actually is emotion. Our emotional life comes from our representations, also our actions. So the nature of the mind is immeasurable goodness. The operation of the mind is representational. That's the first two. The function of the mind is to create or produce measurable goodness. So the function of our thoughts is to bring about something really good in life, something that we enjoy, that we want. We use our minds to create greater and greater happiness. That's the function of the mind. Well, the purpose of the mind is, again, something that's not measurable. The purpose of the mind is that the self becomes immeasurable goodness, that the limited becomes the unlimited. So in the nature, the operation, the function of the mind, and the purpose of the mind, according to the Destination Method, we are working both at the transpersonal level, that means the spiritual level, the immeasurable, as well as the measurable. So that's why the Destination Method is an integration of both the heart and the sword, an integration of the limited and the unlimited. It's something greater than all of that. Well, when we work, we're commonly working with conflicts. We help people to resolve conflicts every day. A conflict could be as simple as, on the one hand, I want to go to school, on the other hand, I want to stay home. On the one hand, I want to go to the beach. On the other hand, I want to go to a birthday party. On the one hand, I want to get married. On the other hand, I want to remain single. On the one hand, I want to remain married. On the other hand, I want to get a divorce. On the one hand, I want to travel. On the other hand, I want to stay home. So on the one hand, I feel real good about myself. On the other hand, I hate myself. On the one hand, I want to be independent. On the other hand, I want to be dependent. Very common conflicts. These are all conflicts. Where does this come from? This comes from the nature of the mind. The human mind is made of representations, and these representations can only be noticed when we compare them with another representation. So that every time we see one thing, we think of its opposite. We can't think of up without thinking of down. We can't think of left without thinking of right. We can't think of the past without thinking of the present and the future. We have to compare one thought with another. That's the nature of the mind, is comparison. So when we are noticing these things that are compared, we sometimes notice that there's a conflict, that we can't go forward because we want two opposing things at the same time, two things that are mutually exclusive. So in our Destination Method, we're commonly working with this, and the way we do it is we find the positive function of each side of the conflict. If we don't find the positive function of each side of the conflict, there's then just a fight between these two parts. There's always going to be a fight between two parts unless they can rise to a higher level that integrates the two or makes it possible to integrate the two. So this is true of every level of existence. The physical level of existence, for example, the birth of a child, comes from the integration of opposites. We have a sperm and an egg that get together. Lo and behold, a baby comes about and is born. This baby is not the sperm and not the egg, but its own separate new level of existence. This happens biologically. It also happens emotionally. It happens mentally. When we integrate opposing desires, I want to be independent on the one hand, I want to be dependent on the other, something new is born. Profound self-love comes from that. And notice, no matter how many integrations we do, we always end up with something new that then produces its own opposite. And that has to be integrated. Everything that is born produces its own opposite. And that must be integrated. The two sides must be integrated for something new to be born. Evolution is like that, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Even when we look at spiritual things, my wife and I were both ordained ministers. We look at everything from every different spiritual tradition. We are interfaith ministers. We're not locked into one particular spiritual understanding. We are interested in every way that human beings have of going forward to becoming happier, more integrated, more connected. We're interested in everything that might bring about human happiness. And when we look into the Christian perspective, Jesus says something like, whenever two or more of you are gathered together in my name, there I am also. Well, what could that mean? Well, they're opposites, two or more. There's two, and then in the name of Jesus, or in the name of the Prince of Peace, in the name of something greater than they are, something new comes about. We're always seeking the telos, which is the ultimate goal of all goals and processes, as Aristotle said thousands of years ago. We're doing the best we can to create something infinitely good, or to acknowledge the infinite goodness of all there is. This is very difficult since our minds are continually finding problems, continually finding opposites. A person starts to think about one side, they say this is good, they think the other side is evil. This fight that goes on constantly about light and darkness produces more of the same, more conflict. What we want to do is we want to integrate opposites to come up with something that transcends the previous two. This allows us to evolve. It doesn't mean that we stop being human. It means that we acknowledge that there's something that we are moving toward, which is wholeness. I want to invite you to explore this because we have throughout our work and the destination method that you'll find throughout our website, we'll find more and more of these kinds of methods that my wife, Dr. Lizette, and I have developed for the resolution of unnecessary human suffering. Because all this suffering that comes from thinking that we have an enemy inside, the very idea that there's an enemy inside, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the most terrible, pernicious lies that has ever been existed. People fight themselves. If you have an enemy inside of yourself, what's going to happen? You'll wrestle yourself to the ground. If you win, you lose. What is the solution to that? As all the spiritual traditions tell us, it is love. It is awakening to something greater than you and I are. Jesus said, it's not I that doeth the work, but the Father within. He also said, I and the Father are one and the same. There's something greater. What we want to do is open to that, to help ourselves and others to get past these ideas that we have to fight ourselves. As soon as we stop fighting ourselves, our hearts open. The natural movement of human beings is toward greater peace, greater joy, greater gratitude, happiness, and generosity. We simply need to move away from the internal fight. How can we do that? We must integrate the opposites. We must find our way to love every single part of ourselves. Because the truth is, and this is a difficult thing for most people, not only is there no such thing as an inner enemy, every single part of you is actively in love with you. Take a while, digest this, and let's move forward together.